Story 1. Someone was upstairs. I still flinch whenever I hear heavy footsteps on a floorboard above me. It doesn't matter if I'm at a friend's apartment or in a crowded hotel lobby. The sound instantly takes me back to that night at my Aunt Sarah's place and the paralyzing realization that safety is just an illusion. It was last October. I was 22, trying to save money for community college classes and house-sitting for my aunt and uncle while they took a week-long cruise down to Mexico. Their house was out in the suburbs, one of those big, echoing places built in the 90s that feels way too quiet when you're by yourself. It was set back from the road, surrounded by tall pines that made the nights extra dark. It was around 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was down in the finished basement, transferring laundry from the washer to the dryer and half watching some gaming video on my phone. The first sound was subtle, just a dull thud from the floor directly above me, which would be the main living room area. I paused my video, tilting my head. My first thought, like anyone else, was just the house settling as the temperature dropped outside. Or maybe their fat orange tabby cat Barnaby jumped off the couch. I waited 10 seconds. Silence. I shrugged it off, started the dryer, and headed up the basement stairs to grab a water from the kitchen fridge. As I stepped into the kitchen, I nearly tripped over something fuzzy near the island. It was Barnaby, curled up fast asleep in front of his food bowl. He let out a little snore. My stomach dropped. If the cat was sound asleep down here, what made the noise upstairs? I stood frozen next to the refrigerator, straining my ears. The silence in the house suddenly felt heavy, almost pressurized. Then I heard it again. Creak, creak. Slow, deliberate steps on the hardwood hallway upstairs, near the master bedroom. This wasn't house noises. This was weight moving with purpose. Someone was walking around up there. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I shot a text to my Aunt Sarah, praying she still had service on the ship. Hey, did Tyler say he was crashing here tonight? My cousin Tyler had a spare key and was known for showing up unannounced to crash on the couch. It was a desperate hope. 3 agonizing dots appeared. No, honey, he's in Florida with friends. Why? I didn't answer. I put the phone in my pocket and grabbed the biggest chef's knife from the wooden block on the counter. It felt ridiculous in my sweaty hand, but I didn't know what else to do. The footsteps stopped right above the kitchen. I held my breath, looking up at the ceiling drywall as if I could see through it. Whoever it was, they were standing right above me. A sudden crash echoed from upstairs, like a lamp shattering against a wall, followed by rapid, heavy running. But the running wasn't away from me. It was thundering toward the top of the stairs. Panic took over. I didn't try to be a hero. I bolted for the front door, fumbling with the deadbolt, feeling like I was moving in slow motion. I threw the door open just as I heard a heavy body hit the bottom step behind me. I didn't look back. I ran across the damp front lawn in just my socks, gasping for air, and banged on the neighbor's door until they woke up and called 911. The cops arrived in under 5 minutes, lights cutting through the dark suburban street. They went in, guns drawn, while I shivered on the sidewalk wrapped in a neighbor's blanket. They came out 20 minutes later looking confused. They checked everywhere. Closets, under beds, behind the shower curtains. The house was empty. The back door was dead-bolted from the inside. The windows were secure. There was a broken lamp upstairs, but nobody there. The lead officer asked me if I was sure I heard someone, looking at me like I was some paranoid kid spooked by the wind. I started to feel crazy. Maybe I had imagined the intensity of it. Then the second cop came down from the upstairs hallway. He was holding a filthy sleeping bag and a handful of granola bar wrappers. Someone's been staying up in the attic crawlspace, he said grimly, shining his flashlight on the objects. Looks like a few weeks at least, long before your aunt left. They found something else up there too. They found a small peephole drilled into the floorboards of the attic, looking straight down into the guest bedroom where I had been sleeping the previous locked door was unlocked. You know that feeling when you double-check a deadbolt, hear the solid metallic click, walk away, and then 5 seconds later your brain whispers, "Are you sure?" That anxiety was my nightly ritual. I couldn't sleep unless I knew my apartment was sealed tight, but I never actually believed anyone would try to get in, until last Tuesday. I live on the ground floor of an older complex outside of Columbus. It's cheap, the walls are thin, and the neighbors keep to themselves. My landlord, Mr. Henderson, is this sweaty, heavy-breathing guy in his 50s who always smells like stale cigarettes, but he seemed harmless enough. It was around 11:30 p.m. I just finished watching a movie and was heading to bed. I did my usual routine at the front door, verify the main lock, then slide the brass chain into place. I watched my hand do it. I felt the metal cold against my skin. I am 100% certain that door was secured. I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth. The bathrooms share a wall with a small entryway. I had the water running, but over the sound of the faucet, I heard a distinct thunk. It sounded exactly like the heavy oak front door hitting the doorstop. I froze, toothbrush hanging out of my mouth. I turned off the water, silence. The apartment suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. I told myself I was hearing things. Maybe a neighbor slammed their door. I walked out of the bathroom and looked down the short hallway. My stomach instantly dropped to my knees. The front door was wide open. The night air was blowing in, drifting across the carpet. I didn't move for a solid minute. My brain couldn't process it. I remembered locking it. I remembered the chain. I took a hesitant step forward and saw the brass chain hanging loosely against the doorframe. It wasn't broken. Someone had deliberately slid it out. I grabbed the biggest chef's knife from the kitchen block and checked every closet, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. The place was empty. I didn't sleep that night. I shoved a dining chair under the doorknob and sat on my couch with all the lights on, clutching that knife. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. Maybe I did forget the chain and the wind blew the door open. It sounded stupid, but it was better than the alternative. That night I was obsessive. I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the chain. Then I took a piece of clear Scotch tape and placed it quietly over the crack between the door and the frame, right near the floor where no one would notice. If that tape was broken, I'd know it wasn't the wind. I woke up the next morning feeling groggy. I walked into the living room. The door was closed. The deadbolt was locked. The chain was on. I knelt down to check the tape. The piece of Scotch tape was snapped cleanly down the middle. Someone had come in, walked around my apartment while I was sleeping, and then locked up behind them when they left. The realization made me feel physically sick. The violation was worse than a robbery. I called the police, but without signs of forced entry or anything stolen, there wasn't much they could do. They filed a report and told me to change the locks. I called Mr. Henderson immediately to ask for permission to swap the deadbolt. He sounded annoyed, breathing heavily into the phone, asking why I was being so paranoid. He said he'd have to come over and supervise if I did it. That night, I decided I was catching whoever this was. I turned off all the lights at 10. I sat in the dark corner of my kitchen, which had a direct line of sight to the front door. I had a baseball bat resting against my knee. 3 hours passed. My eyes were burning from staring at the brass knob. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I heard a soft scratching sound from the other side of the door. Then the deadbolt started to turn. It turned slowly, smoothly, like someone had a key that fit perfectly. My heart was hammering so hard I thought they'd hear it through the wood. The door creaked open just an inch. A hand reached through the gap to undo the chain. I didn't wait. I screamed and charged the door, swinging the bat wildly. I connected hard with the wood, slamming the door back onto the intruder. I heard a yelp of pain and heavy footsteps scrambling away down the concrete walkway outside. I ripped the door open, ready to fight. but they were gone. I called the cops again. This time they took it seriously. While one officer was taking my statement, another went to knock on Mr. Henderson's door to see if he'd heard the commotion, since his unit was right above mine. No answer. They got the superintendent to open it for a welfare check. They didn't find Henderson, but on his messy kitchen table, they found a large keyring with keys labeled for every single apartment in the complex. Next to the keys was a digital camera. The cop came down, looking pale. He asked me when I bought the red flannel sheets currently on my bed. I told him about 3 weeks ago. He showed me the camera's display. The last picture taken was of me, fast asleep, cocooned in those red sheets. The timestamp on the photo was from 2 nights ago. There were dozens more going back months. I moved out the next morning. I broke my lease. I didn't care. But even now, in a new place 4 states away with 3 different locks on the door, I can't sleep without wedging a chair under the knob. Because I know now that locks only keep honest people out. And sometimes, the monster has the master key. Story 3. The mirror reflection smiled. I haven't looked at myself in a mirror for 3 days. I can't. Not since the night my reflection decided it didn't want to copy me anymore. If you think that sounds crazy, trust me, I'm right there with you. But I know what I saw, and the feeling of absolute dread that washed over me hasn't left since. I just moved into this cheap studio apartment on the west side of town about a week ago. It's an older building, one of those places that always smells faintly of dust and boiled cabbage in the hallways. The landlord, a guy named Mr. Russo, gave me a deal because the last tenant bolted in the middle of the night without paying. Red flag number 1, I know, but I was desperate. The apartment was mostly empty except for the bathroom. Built right into the wall above the sink was this massive, ancient-looking mirror. The glass was thick and slightly warped at the edges, in a heavy, tarnished brass frame bolted deep into the plaster. It felt too big for the tiny room. The first few days were fine. Just normal unpacking, ordering pizza, passing out on my mattress. The weirdness started on Thursday night. I was getting ready for bed around midnight. I was exhausted from a double shift at the warehouse. I was brushing my teeth, staring blankly at my own tired face in that big mirror. I leaned down to spit in the sink, and when I stood back up, my reflection was a split second late. It was so fast I almost missed it. Just a tiny lag like a bad video call connection. I froze, toothpaste foam still around my mouth. I moved my head quickly to the left. The reflection followed instantly. I waved my hand. Perfect sync. I told myself it was just sleep deprivation. Your brain does weird things when you're running on 4 hours of sleep and energy drinks. I went to bed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next morning, things got worse. I was rushing to get ready for work, tying my tie in the bathroom. I was stressed, already running late. I looked up at the mirror and frowned at myself, frustrated. My reflection frowned back, but it was different. My frown was just stress. The reflection's frown was deep, angry, and hateful. Its eyes were narrowed slightly more than mine. It looked furious. A cold chill crawled up my spine. I leaned closer to the glass, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs. "What are you?" I whispered. It felt stupid saying it out loud to an empty room. I blinked. The reflection didn't. I stumbled backward, tripping over the bath mat and slamming my shoulder against the doorframe. In the mirror, my reflection was still standing close to the glass, eyes wide open, staring right at me. It wasn't mimicking my fall. It was just watching me panic. I ran out of the apartment. I spent the entire day walking around the city, terrified to go back, but I had nowhere else to go. I got back around 10 p.m. The apartment was dead silent. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox in the kitchen. I don't know what I planned to do with it, but it made me feel slightly less helpless. I crept toward the bathroom door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly with the tip of my shoe. The bathroom light was off. but the streetlights outside cast enough glow to see the mirror. My reflection was already there. It wasn't waiting for me to step in front of it. It was just standing there in the dark glass. And it was smiling. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far across its face, showing too many teeth. It looked predatory. Terror took over. I couldn't handle it. I raised the hammer and swung it as hard as I could at the center of the mirror. Crash! The sound was deafening in the small room. Shards of heavy glass exploded outward, raining down into the sink and onto the floor. I shielded my face, breathing hard, waiting for the relief of destroying the thing. I lowered my arm and looked up. The glass was gone. The brass frame was empty, framing the rough drywall behind it. But the reflection was still there. It was standing in the air where the glass used to be. That horrible, wide smile was still on its face. Then it stepped forward, out of the frame, into my bathroom. I tried to scream, but my throat closed up. I tried to run, but I couldn't move my legs. The smiling duplicate walked right past me. It didn't even look at me. It walked out of the bathroom into the living room, and I heard the front door of my apartment open and close. I'm still in the bathroom. I've tried to leave. Every time I try to walk through the doorway, I bump into something cold and invisible. It feels like thick glass.